Thank you. Thank you all and welcome to the late starting Cabinet meeting on the 8th of December 2021. The reason for this starting late is an overrunning previous meeting that needed to be concluded. So I'm going to move straight on to item 1, which is apologies for absence. I've only received apologies for absence of Councillor Spillman. Anybody else? No. Excellent, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. The minutes of the last meeting can be found, that's the meeting of the 10th of November 2021, can be found between pages 5 and 12. Is that seconded? Any comments on it? None? Okay, in that case I'll move that they be agreed. Excellent. Items of urgent business. I've not accepted any additional items of urgent business this evening, although everybody, except for me at the moment, has a update from Planning, Transport and Generation. Thank you very much, Lucy. Meetings, I believe, was last night.
Yeah, last night.
And that will form part of our briefing record on the relevant items. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest in relation to the items in front of us this evening? No? Excellent. So moving to my statement, as we're overrunning, I'll try and keep it short, but there's quite a lot to cover. As you all know, the government and medical experts are currently assessing the risk of the new Omicron variant of COVID that is spreading across the UK. We now have our first confirmed cases in Thurrock, and the council is working closely with the UK Health Security Agency and NHS Test and Trace Service with processes in place to manage the cases and the close contacts. Whilst this has changed literally just before I came into the room, so I will need to refer to my phone as we go through. New rules came into force on Tuesday the 30th of November around face coverings as a temporary precaution measure while the assessment was being taken place. Also, this face covering precautions have been extended, also will be extended from, I believe it's Monday, but I just want to make sure. Again, face masks will be extended. I'll just need to confirm whether that's Monday, but as of today, it's still the rules that came in on the 30th. So I really do feel that I need to correct some very confused and misleading coverage. Oh, sorry, face mask is Friday. My apologies. Working mine was Monday. One of them. So following some very confused and misleading coverage recently under current face covering rules. Currently, face covering must be worn, in shops, shopping centres, banks, building societies, and on public transport, including taxis and private hire cars, unless that person or persons are exempt. Under the current temporary rules, there is no legal requirement for face coverings to be worn in the street, in non-retail places, offices, or other public buildings, which is why some, and indeed actually all of my cabinet colleagues, are not wearing face coverings now. But as I've just said, that will change on Friday. As soon as it does, there will be an update sent from me, as everyone has expected pretty much entirely since COVID started, that will outline the government guidance and rules. But as mentioned, the wearing of masks applies to people unless that person or persons are exempt from doing so, just like myself. Please remember that those who are exempt do not routinely need to show any written evidence or do not need to show any exemption card or any form of identification to say so. Whenever a face covering order has been in force, I have chosen to wear my lanyard that says I'm mask exempt, just for the comfort of those that are around me. The situation does seem to be very reminiscent of where we were last year, but that does not mean the rules and situations are exactly the same. As I said, all these key differences will be outlined in my regular update on Friday. But of course, there's a massive key difference between now and last year, and that's the hugely successful vaccine rollout programme that we've seen nationally. Vaccines provide the protection against catching, transmitting coronavirus, and offers excellent protection against becoming seriously ill if you do catch either the variants. Another significant way we can protect ourselves and each other is by making sure that when we are meeting family and friends indoors, that the area is well ventilated. Opening up windows for just 10 minutes in every hour will remove the infected particles from the room, which is why the windows are open this evening. And everyone is cold. I do apologise. Also, being careful and considerate of others will help us have a safe and secure Christmas, and that you can all enjoy the get-together celebrations as we go through the present period. We have seen, like everywhere else in the UK, increases in the infection rate, so we will still all need to play our part. To outline those, the local rate is 616 people infected per 100,000. The number of infected people as of today in Thurrock is 1,082. That means we're now on the upper tier local authority list for that of the 21st highest rate in the country. And when we drill down through those figures, it's very noticeable to see that those under 49 happen to be the least vaccinated age groups. They account for 86% of all the borough's infections currently. Proof, I think, that getting vaccinated will give you a higher level of protection than not. The booster vaccines have also been playing their part and have become available for over 40s at the 3 month after their second dose. I would urge anyone over 40 years old who's had their second dose more than 3 months since that's taken place to book online immediately to boost your protection and make it safer for everyone. Moving away from that, I'll go to shop locally. We've recently launched a campaign to encourage residents to shop locally and shop safe, especially over the Christmas period. We are working with local businesses and hospitality venues to promote all the fantastic shops, cafes, bars, restaurants available right here in Thurrock. 1 month in, we've got nearly 30 small and family-run businesses that have backed our campaign. And I would ask any of those that haven't to get in contact with the council so we can see how we can help you. We're also offering free parking at the council's car parks on Saturdays throughout December as part of our campaign to encourage residents to shop local this Christmas. I urge everyone to support local businesses and take advantage of the many wonderful shops we have right here in Thurrock and right across the whole of the borough. On the White Ribbon campaign, that's just coming to an end, my cabinet colleagues and I have been very vocal in our support of the 16 days of action that we've taken part in following the raising of the flag at civic offices to mark White Ribbon Day, which asks boys and men to make promises to never commit, excuse, or remain silent about male violence towards women. Also, as part of this and part of the Safer Streets campaign, the week before last, I was out with officers in the High Street by the station, and along with the police and other partners, we were asking residents where and when they feel safe and when and where they don't feel safe. This is part of an Essex Police drive to understand where they need to put their resources more effectively. And if any person still wishes to do so, they can take part in that on the Essex Police website. This is all part of an ongoing working programme that's taking place in the borough to make sure that we tackle crime and ensure our residents feel confident to visit our town centres day and night, and therefore improve the gift of the small businesses and the large businesses as well in supplying Thurrock with their needs. And finally, with this being our last the last cabinet meeting of 2021, and whilst I know I will see many of you beforehand, for those that I don't, I'd like to wish everybody a safe and merry Christmas and a happy New Year. Thank you. So, briefings on policy, budget and other issues. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Leader. I'll try and keep it brief as possible. I'd like to refer to the recent consultation regarding 2 council-run nurseries in Tilbury, which I believe needs to be brought to the public's attention. Something that can only be described as a political member trying to claim credit using misleading and inaccurate wording for what was always the council's preferred option. The chair of the Children's Overview and Scrutiny Committee made a statement to the local press on Monday stating the nursery is under threat of closure and see a loss of over 30 staff and 126 nursery places if they close. The proposal was brought forward to find another provider to run the nurseries. With the deadline of March 2022, it seemed unlikely this could be achieved. The chair went on to praise the public response to that consultation, which I agree with, and stated, "I'm glad to hear that due to the objections of the Thurrock Labour councillors on the committee, the deadline has now been extended." Well, Leader, I'd like to actually point you to the minutes recorded at that Children's ONS Scrutiny Committee on the 12th of October, item 2, which was to approve the correct record of the minutes from that Overview and Scrutiny Committee held in July 2021, 13. More detail was sought on the proposed closure of 2 nurseries in Tilbury regarding savings and the number of staff currently employed. The councillor asked whether placements would be found for the children that were currently attending the nurseries, and the director replied, "Councils no longer manage nurseries, and Thurrock was one of the few left that still did." She said there were 33 part-time staff in both nurseries and that there would be a saving of around £130,000. She confirmed that placements would be found for the children. She went on to say that the service would go through the consultation stage to find a provider to manage each nursery. If there were no providers to take over the nurseries, the council would look to close the nurseries in the summer term of next year. The consultation process had not started. Now, perhaps the chair just misled or simply doesn't listen to the responses given to questions asked at the committee, but either way, it's abundantly clear not only was it always the council's intention to seek a provider once the consultation had ceased, but it was also very clear that should that not be possible, then the nurseries would remain open until the summer term of next year anyway, not March 2022. I'm sorry, but opportunism like this should just not be encouraged, and if the local press wishes the public to have faith in their reports, I would have thought a little investigation on their part was not going to miss. The chair's claim that news of the proposal was first brought to committee in September 2021 was inaccurate, as there was actually no meeting in September 2021. The committee saw these proposals in July 2021, both of which could have been confirmed by the council's website very easily by any member of the local press. However, I would add, dear Leader, I'm thankful that the Labour councillors have publicly agreed with the council's intention to find a new provider, as their overwhelming agreement should prevent the decision being called in.
I'm sure that may well not be the case. We will wait with bated breath. And yes, fancy that local press being inaccurate and indeed not checking properly. So moving on to item 7, petitions from members of the public. We'll see if we have any petitions. Excellent. Questions from non-exec members. Do we have any non-exec members? Thank you. Matters referred to cabinet consideration by Overview and Scrutiny Committee. We have a report from PTR, as mentioned in the outline, which is mainly, I understand, for item 12, the highways term maintenance and street lighting contract procurement. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Excellent. Sorry. So that's item 9. Item 10, financial update, quarter 2, 2021-22. That's pages 13 to 40. Councillor.
Thank you, Leader and leading colleagues. Colleagues, COVID has made the world scary enough, and there are real things that are worrying families at the moment, least of all with announcements like what will come out at 6 p.m. this evening. And so it needs to be said quite clearly that promoting uncontextualised, half-story narratives around the local authority's finances is not on and is harming the borough when the context is not provided. And it's time to dispel some narratives. I have some graphics of interest for anyone that wants to see them. Don't sound like that, but let me go through the facts that for some reason aren't getting out there for whatever motivation. The investment approach has generated £115 million worth of income after the now frequently proclaimed £16 million worth of interest payments is deducted, which, by the way, accounts for interest on the capital programme as well, so not just investments. So, quite simply, without the £16 million worth of interest either, There would have been, though, £115 million brought in to pay for services. All 49 councillors voted 3 times in 2017, 2018 and 2019 to allow borrowing to increase to £2 billion. We have not allowed this to go all the way, and it was this administration which proposed the cut to borrowing levels at the start of this year. The truth is that Thurrock residents have benefited from a near 11.5% return over this period from the approach. The investment strategy was universally backed by all councillors in the chamber. And Leader, you'll remember when members of the opposition were asking us why we didn't invest more. And opposition leaders who have been put onto record claiming fame for the approach, of course, infamously in February 2018. Indeed, the Leader of the opposition was right. The approach did start under his watch. When Labour last won this council, the reserves for a rainy day were very low at £8 million. Well, the investments allowed their reserves to increase by 300% to £24 million. Thurrock's finances are in better hands under this Conservative council versus the mess that Labour left and threatened to return us to. Pre-COVID, Conservative Thurrock had a balanced budget over multiple years. It had a budget surplus of £4 million in its last year and reserves 300% stronger than what we inherited. Labour councils, maybe Croydon and Slough, their finances have caused a wobble, and as a result, the freedom for investments that have allowed Thurrock to thrive and bring in additional money to be spent on Thurrock and additional services above core services will be no more. And I am highlighting this for a reason. Labour councillors who took credit for the approach voted for something 3 times and present only part of a narrative are no friends of this borough. In fact, taking glee in the approach ending, even when they know this means being able to spend less on our communities. This was money that has paid for services that residents rely on daily and has helped maintain the 3rd lowest Band D council tax of any unitary authority and a bill of £170 less than most by other council in Thurrock on average. For those who do not understand why Thurrock entered an investment approach, this is probably the greatest illustration, this graph here, and I'll explain it. The council's annual budget is nearly £150 million. We receive £70 million in council tax, under £40 million on business rates. There's about £10 million of various grant funding, and currently there's circa £30 million of income through the investment approach. Without that £30 million per annum, that leaves, guess what? A £30 million gap. A gap successfully closed for 4 years through the approach that all of us signed up to. It was the policy of this administration to be ethical about what we did. We invested in green power. It's good for the taxpayer and good for the world. We don't run or operate sites. Officer attention is fully focused on the borough, not on outside operations. And we haven't tried to play the free market like some Labour councils have done to great public harm. Those who now distance themselves from the approach need to ask themselves if it was good enough for you to support and take credit for in 2017 to close that £30 million gap. What is your motivation for not standing by your convictions which endured in 2017, 2018 and 2019? Thurrock has done investments for decades, long before 2017. In 2017, Thurrock councils built on prior successes, building on findings from peer reviews that Thurrock has been through, and which suggested that we could be more successful in the investment market. And I quote something from the peer review of 2017. One recommendation is to review all opportunities for balancing the revenue budget, efficiency savings versus income generation, including investment. The council needs to use all the means it has to balance the revenue budget, actively exploiting them and constantly revisiting the options. A £4 million surplus and presently £3.3 million of the £24 million of reserves have been used to cover the cost of COVID-19 along with government support. Had we not done what we had done, if we were still at £8 million worth of reserves, remembering that it is a council that made the decision around investments, not cabinet, the faults are otherwise unimaginable. It would be wrong of us not to highlight this when poorly contextualised points around interest payments and points about all the history and wider context around borrowing levels seemingly are things that are not being said in public. The council has to face up to a change in income and expenditure. We're going to talk a little bit about expenditure at the moment. Councillor Johnson and I have been talking about children's social care a lot lately, and Barry's going to come in on that at the moment. And income, as we've already confirmed, will be coming down. Whilst this will be hard and there will be decisions that no one gets into politics to make, there remains Now, just 4 million against the 34 million plus gap to close. That plan had been drafted within 2 months of this municipal year and has been and has to be put in train. We will do all possible to protect the vulnerable in social care, to protect our environment, to keep it clean, and not to put tax up beyond referendum levels, because tax cannot and will not be the default response to this issue. We have to cut the size of the council's cost. And I'll hand over to Councillor Johnson, who's going to pick up on children's social care.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, maybe if I could just throw some context on the problems facing children's services in general, and in particular the social care area, where many of our statutory duties, and whether their statutory duties lie as a local authority, which are the main cause of concern of our budgets. Current budgeted spend on children and family services is almost 50% of that 70 million council tax that you mentioned. It's becoming a daily challenge to place looks after children within those budgeted costs. As supply issues see many authorities competing for the same places. However, I must reiterate that our first duty is to the children now and will continue to always be so. Whilst it may be the case of not necessarily having more children using the service, it is certainly the case of having more increased complexity of needs, coupled with the rapidly rising costs of providing for those needs, which really is of the gravest concern. We've seen an increase in the average weekly placement costs right across the board within regulated services. That's approximately 20% in residential placements, and around 10% in independent fostering agency costs, mother and baby placements, and supported accommodation costs. However, the largest and most worrying rise comes from the unregulated placement costs. This is really a relatively new pressure, following the government quite rightly banning the placement of under-16s in unregulated placements to ensure the most vulnerable young people's needs are undertaken in settings that best meet those needs. At present, we're currently looking to convert our 3 such cases to an alternative residential provision. To try and put some context around that, the last reported average annual salary for people residing in Thurrock was approximately £34,000. The cost of these placements is £20,000 per week and rising. You do the math on that. We've also seen pressures in the demand for additional support within accommodation for our young people, which has arisen from cases developed during the pandemic, with COVID-19 pressures also affecting cost rises on delayed legal proceedings with care plans, etc. However, whilst the projected overspends are of concern, I must remind colleagues that we continue to work closely with all partners, including finance, to deliver efficiencies and drive down business administration costs, while still adhering to what I said, our children first duty, by maintaining the good practice already in place. We will strive through oversight via panels and development boards to apply good standards of care and innovative thinking in attempting to reduce the numbers of children coming into care by identifying and supporting families in need of that support at the earliest possible stage. We will also look to achieve this with individual or solo child placements commissioned by Thurrock, and with Thurrock providing Ofsted standard accommodation and commissioning that service. As a side issue, maybe some of you are not aware of this yet, but we are currently looking at the possibility of engaging members as champions for key areas such as health, housing, education and training, which I hope will further strengthen our commitment to tackling the causes of children coming into care and being able to prevent it. As I said, it is a grave concern. We are working as hard as we can, but it must remain children first. That's our main concern.
Thank you, Councillor Head, and thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any questions for Councillor Head across the board? No? It's always shocking that overly unbalanced, should we say, statements are used in certain areas and for certain gain. Because you mentioned the £16 million that keeps on being thrown out, how much that would pay for. So you also said that's the capital programme interest.
That includes the capital plan interest as well. It's not just the investment interest. That £16 million is the interest payment for all forms of capital investment and borrowing.
Okay. So would that also include like the LOBO payments and stuff that was tied up into by previous administration?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the logo, sorry, you're asking me a question. The logo stuff is just a joke, frankly. I mean, that is an agreement that we never, that will recycle all the while that's not on the plan. Because the terms and conditions of logo debt in the early 2000s were so, I mean, they must have looked attractive, but they clearly aren't now. And what we worked out is to actually release ourselves from that debt would actually cost us more than paying back the debt and the interest all put together. So you may as well carry on paying it, but you've got no way of paying it because it's long-term debt, so subsequently you're going to have to recycle the borrowing for that.
Yeah. So it's just the, you know, it's when that headline snatch, you know, that 16 million we could be able to spend that on the insert name of pet project. It's not actually the case. It's actually money that's been accrued, well, since before any of us were councillors, actually. I think even before Councillor Main was a councillor, which is slightly longer than me, just for the record. Yes, so it's quite a broad figure that's being narrowed down for political point scoring and headlines grabbing as well. On the, when you mentioned obviously there were two Labour local authorities that have gone with such a normal dawn notice. The reason I was actually flat through my phone is it would appear that at least another one, possibly two Labour, may also be going down that route shortly. I won't name them because I'm too nice. But that will probably be out there shortly. But just to touch on Councillor Johnson's point, 34,000 was it for the average pay in Thurrock?
33,900 pounds.
Okay. So that very rough calculation, 10.5 days in that new regulated care would wipe out somebody's annual salary, which is absolutely shocking. And this is not something we can avoid. It's not something that, you know, it's a price that we've made up. That's the price that's being charged to us for that, because that, you know, you start working out 5-point placement here, it's £100,000. Doesn't matter how quick you say it's £100,000. Two of them, 200,000. 10 of them a year. Yeah, I don't know how many you do get in a year, but it was good to hear that we're converting 3 of those placements into in borough provisions and stuff. Yeah, having discussed that with you earlier in the week, I was quite impressed with that. So well done, continue that. Okay, any other statements or questions in relation to this before I move to the recommendations of 1.1 to 1.3 on page 15? Are they all agreed? Agreed. Excellent. So moving on to adult social care provider services transformation, which is page 41 to 62. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Leader. This paper sets out plans to transform adult social care and help us create a better, more rounded and modern offer with more personal control for our care users and their families. This paper recommends moving to a wellbeing team care delivery model, rationalisation of day care to greatly improve our offer and give users and carers greater flexibility and choice, and a new way to deliver meals. Firstly, I want to reassure Cabinet and make it very clear to our residents that we're not removing services, we're improving them and doing it in such a way that not only makes for a much better quality of life, but also finds ways to use taxpayers' money more efficiently to help with the budget pressures and increase usage our adult care system is seeing post-COVID-19 with a significant rise in the number of residents requiring long-term care. Council has a statutory duty under the Care Act to provide care and support to our residents, which includes residential and home care, as well as day care and a nutritional meal. However, our director, officers and staff are dedicated to providing a personal and caring service far beyond a statutory duty wherever possible. And when I hear users of our services saying, we're like a family here, I know we're doing a great job. We have a vision in Thurrock to see our main social care and health organisations, including the council, working together to improve how we support people in our communities. To that end, we trialled a pilot model of wellbeing teams in both Tilbury and Chadwell, which has proved highly successful with much greater continuity and customer satisfaction, and a 3-fold reduction in unplanned hospital admissions and a 7-fold reduction in GP appointments. This wellbeing teams approach sees us move away from the old, large, traditional service areas whereby users often face lots of tick box assessments by different service providers trying to categorise them to get a specific level of care in place, only to have to face the whole process again if a change in care is needed, to a much more personal approach by smaller, upskilled, self-managed, agile teams made up from across the spectrum of service providers, all talking and working together in teams instead of separately, and thus being able to provide continuity and relationship building with carers that can rapidly adapt and change care packages to suit individuals as and when they need it to change, rather than getting change when it suits the system. Service users are definitely the focus of this type of model, allowing them to determine how and what care they need, bringing greater independence and a better quality of life, which is why I'm very happy to support it. It also builds job satisfaction, stability and career progression for our key workers and helps attract and keep good quality staff in Thurrock. To improve how we support people within our communities, we also reviewed daycare provision and our meal delivery service, whereby we consulted and spoke to all existing users of the two services to ensure they had an input, would be happy with any potential changes, and allow us to understand the impact on individual service users. This provided us a very worthwhile exercise. This proved to us it was a very worthwhile exercise, and I want to thank all officers involved for the time and care they took to ensure the offer was fully understood by all those directly involved, including family members acting as carers. If we look at daycare first, unfortunately during COVID this offer had to close its doors, but it didn't stop our staff delivering the daycare offer. They found different ways of supporting both carers and users, from offering respite care within the service user's home, which is so much more personalised and has proved very popular, to FaceTiming with friends and linking users via social media. By rationalising Bell's House and Kynock into Cromwell Road, officers realised we would be able to offer a much broader spectrum of daycare provision, more stylised to the needs of users and carers, and continue with the outreach approach of respite care and activities that have proved so popular, plus expand our hours past the usual 9 till 4 timescale. With greater support for informal carers, new opportunities for support groups, access to a new outdoor gym, landscape gardens, dedicated craft, IT and pantry rooms, plus an extended kitchen, cafe culture, users can also become involved in cooking and social activities. This is a much improved service for all existing users and allows us to support more going forward, and it seems all our existing users and their carers think so too. All users of Bell House have said yes to moving to Cromwell Road and are looking forward to a much better service provision than having to sit in the next shop with no garden. You may recall the scaremongering and misrepresentation in the media of this report, leading to concerns from Thurrock residents about relocating the Kynock Day Centre. A personalised consultation, which was always planned anyway, has proved the recommended move is the right thing to do, and I hope the results reassure those with concerns. Some residents have seen their health deteriorate and no longer require daycare, but all current users of Kynock are happy to go to Cromwell Road. Yes, there were 5 users that said Cromwell Road was too far to travel, but actually they'd already chosen not to return to the Kynock Centre. One is in residential care, and the other 4 really like the alternative arrangements that they have and want to continue with them. The consultation went on to speak to all 89 users of the meal delivery service, and we found some had already cancelled the service as they're able to cook and buy their own meals and prefer to do this. Many others already have care packages in place that can be easily adjusted to include a meal at home. So this actually left us with just 24 residents in need of a meal service. And so it just doesn't make economic sense to refurbish and continue to spend £190,000 a year on a building used solely to provide those meals. Instead, we'll ensure that those residents in need are catered for in a way that suits them and their lifestyle best. For example, this might be via a local dining club or a cafe or a day centre, where they can have the meal delivered at home, or perhaps go and socialise and not eat alone. But whichever way it happens, we'll continue to ensure that residents receive their meals. For all the reasons discussed here, I would urge Cabinet to approve the recommendations outlined in this report, and I'd like to thank all the staff involved in the transformation programme. Having listened to both service users and those working with adult social care, I know we're a caring and dedicated team who strive to give adult residents the best care they can.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions in relation to that? No? That seems to be a common theme involved in this evening. It's scaremongering. And it was really pleasing to hear that all the current users are quite happy and want to move into the new daycare, or used daycare facility, sorry. And indeed that we've got everybody covered. And as quite rightly said, you get a huge amount that were on it actually don't need it anymore because they're back and able to do so for themselves. Why? Because there's been a model of, oh, we'll come to you and give it to you in your home. Why shouldn't we be in a position to encourage people to be going out if they can, and eating with others, to be, seeing faces every day rather than being stuck at home alone, not being able to do much for themselves, but for whatever reason, not just something that's learned. So that's really, really good to hear. So I certainly will be approving the recommendation. But we'll move to recommendation page 42 at 1.1. Are they agreed by Cabinet? Agreed. Excellent. Moving on to item 12, which is page 63. And that, sorry, get there eventually. Which is the highways term maintenance and street lighting contracts. And I'll pass it over to you, Councillor Manley.
Thank you, Leader. The term maintenance contract is essentially the means by which we deliver the bulk of our highways works here in Thurrock via external providers, and the current contract is due to expire in March 2023. It's time to begin thinking about a new procurement process, and that's what this paper sets the scene for. It's not about awarding any particular contract at this point. It's purely about beginning that process and looking about what we want to go out to the market with. I think there's two things in the report which are worthy of note. First of all, we're proposing that we remove streetlight maintenance from the main contract. That's simply because there's a lot of specialist maintenance providers out there in the market which don't tender for that work in Thurrock because we back it up with the other works which they can't provide. So I think that's a common sense approach. I know street lighting doesn't get many people excited, but with the LED replacement programme, the new maintenance system that we've now introduced is actually, a lot of things that we need to get from our network, including carbon efficiencies and financial savings, and right, we have a specialist provider. So I think that's something that is good for us to look at, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes back from the market on that. The other thing, again, there's been no scaremongering on this yet. I'm sure there will be. There are a number of highway services that we still provide in-house, with Briefings being one, gully cleansing and reactive maintenance. It's again right that we, as part of this process, test the market to see whether or not we can get those services, but with more efficiencies. We're not saying at this stage that we are going to put them out to private provider, but it's right we look at that to see whether or not we can still get those great services, but with more efficiencies. It's important that we stress there's no decision on that, and it might be that they stay in-house, but it's an opportune time. We're looking at all services to see if we can deliver those more efficiently, and highways is no exception. So obviously Cabinet being asked to agree to that approach. I think that's really all there is to say about that. It's a brief report because, as I say, we are setting the scene here. We're not making a final decision. The recommendations are what they are. Happy to put those to Cabinet and ask for your endorsement and take any questions.
Any questions, Councillor Manley?
No, you don't get absolutely. We owe it to our residents to see whether we can provide better services for, by cheaper means.
Yeah, having spoken to the corporate director myself on this before, here this evening, it's definitely the right approach. why wouldn't we get those specialist people in with their specialist equipment to do the lighting maintenance? I'm referring back to the PTR report where lighting maintenance in one particular council estate, supervised, was brought to our attention, that is quite clearly a housing contract or a housing issue, but it would be interesting to see if there is a possibility for some cross-partnership working between the HRA and then delivering that. It just seems to me it's because there's a line on the map or someone owns something, someone else don't, we'll end up repairing one this side of the road but not the other side of the road because it's under housing. So I think that's an opportunity that we should look into. Indeed, thinking back on it, I suggested that happen when this programme was first put in force, 3 years after I suggested it happened in the first place. But that was thoroughly rejected by the previous leader of the council and the OD scrutiny committee at the time, but we glossed over that. So we're going to move to the recommendations at 1.1 through to 1.4 on page 64. Are there any? Is everyone in agreement with that? Excellent, thank you.
Great.
Move on to page 71. Oh, my voice, that's finally going.
Great.
That's Councillor Jeffries with Public Land Maintenance Strategy.
Sure.
Thank you, Leader. When this administration was first elected, it introduced a clean it, cut it, fill it programme, which has been hugely successful, and I was pleased when I was elected to be able to continue to support that. So I see this strategy as an extension, the next stage of the clean it, cut it, fill it, making the borough brighter, cleaner, and more environmentally friendly. So this strategy has been prepared to ensure that all the borough open spaces are effectively managed. This is not a cost-cutting measure, as some people would say it is. It's about improving our green and open spaces. The strategy, when implemented, will see the amount of maintenance in some areas decrease, that's true, but that will allow our resources to be redirected and targeted into other areas. Our open spaces enrich the quality of our residents' lives, have a positive environmental impact, and contribute towards a healthy lifestyle. By working with communities and friends of parks, we provide space for recreation, play, improve the physical health through exercise, contribute to good mental health and well-being. And more importantly, we'll foster civic pride, giving residents parks and open spaces to enjoy and take pride in. It will also encourage biodiversity, so to provide wildlife habitats, which will lead to an increase in insects, bees, birds and butterflies, all essential to improve our environment. So I'm absolutely delighted to recommend this report to Cabinet colleagues. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Any questions to Councillor Jeffries? I've been going through this report, Councillor Jeffries and the Director before it was published. It's really good to see. This is not just about us doing, it's also working with our residents to help provide that. Friends of Parks have worked really well. There's projects ongoing in my own ward, which has been 99.9% run by the local residents. Can't wait until that gets formally announced next year when it gets opened. The work they've done there, and I know many have seen the pictures, is absolutely great. And this is what we need to do. This is not just about us. This is also about what do you want as an eating area and so on. So very, very impressed with the approach. So thank you. Councillor Mayne.
Thanks, Lee. That's just not so much a question, but something that Councillor Jeffries can take away that they think about and pass back to his officers. I think working with friends of groups is essential. I've for a long, long time felt that communities need to take more ownership of the assets in their communities. The old days of just relying on the council for everything, they're gone and they're not coming back, and it's right that we all play our part. I, along with Councillor Redfield, set up Friends of Blackshots a few years ago now. It's been a major success in Blackshot. Lots of investment in. I think what I would say, they don't always feel overly valued by the council, so I think that's something we need to work on. I think that the main thing is there's lots of friends groups springing up now, and it would be good if we could think of some form, some way to bring them together so that they can share best practice, because I know there are some friends of groups group that are very almost professional, like in their approach. They've got lots of things they can share, but some of those fledgling ones don't always know where to go. So perhaps moving forward as part of this strategy, we could think of a way that we can bring them together. Yeah, best practice.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to have fresh ideas, but what he don't want is wasting time reinventing the wheel. So I think it's a really, really good suggestion. So take that forward. Councillor. Okay, there's no more questions. We'll move to the recommendation of 1.1 of page 71. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent. Moving on to the final report, which is report to corporate performance report, which I will pass over to Councillor Duffy.
Thank you very much. As the famous saying goes, saving the best till last.
In your opinion.
So we saw 71.43% of targets achieved, which was good. Obviously, we strive to make sure that's 100%. We'll continue to work in that direction. There was over 50%, so 59.4% improvement in direction of travel, and just under 22% static. So a really positive move. There's two I want to just draw particular attention to. One I mentioned every time on corporate ONS is the number of new apprenticeships. Great to see that achieving 33 in the Q2, which was over our target of 30. And it's something that I've asked the council to continue focusing on. And then the number of new micro enterprises, we saw 16 achieved in the quarter, which was really, really good. That was up on 4 in the first quarter, so really, really, really positive direction. So really impressed there. And I just want to say a massive thank you to officers for the work they've done this year. It's my last council meeting for Christmas, so just wish you Merry Christmas.
Sorry, excuse me, the voice really is going, there's no reason for it. Thank you very much, Councillor Duffy. Any questions from members in relation, or statements from members in relation to either those underperforming indicators? All here says correctly try and find no one, or any other positive statements in the room. Thank you. There it is. Expanding notice. Obviously, with the approach that we've taken, expenses where people be employed or be negatively we have seen down under the figures that we it is going to fail throughout the year. Ends to a degree in September. Sorry, it starts to dip back into July and August. Priorities planned at that point, but we need to all of those. So, are there any more questions or statements?
So it looks like for the proportion of people use social care direct payments. To understand that better, it's out of hospital or they go into the care system. They can choose to move to direct payments where they make their own care provision arrangements. They take outside services to do it. This, to me, the fact that we're failing on this is actually to our credit, because it's that the staff, we're doing such a good job with the care that people don't want to move out from that care package. They want to stay within that. So it's kind of like a converse way of looking at that one.
It is.
Trying to sort of put some understanding around that. We're actually doing a good job, not a bad job.
Yeah, but I cannot remember the time. Again, I'm going to look at some slightly longer serving member line that we've done drive after drive after. It's a number of self-sufficient, and self, stuff. I can think at least. Quite a lot up and there's just no appetite, because you say we are just, we so well. It's a shame, it's their personal and everything else, but we are where we are. So, thank you for that. So, if there are no other statements or questions, we'll move back to the recommendations. So, recommendations on page 100, 1.1 and 1.2. I will agree. Agree. Excellent. In that case, thank you very much for this evening's extended cabinet meeting, and I bring it to a close at 20:15. Thank you all.